One more step in air travel, as for the first time 6 British racehorses are flown to their new owners across the Atlantic. One of the distinguished passengers was the famous Fast and Fair, who didn't much fancy the role of Pegasus. No, not one bit. He may be a flyer on the racecourse, but up here he's not too sure. Anyway, the temperament doesn't last long, and by the time they take off, Fast and Fair and his pals are quite proud of their new title for export only. American eyes turn to Capitol Hill, Washington, for the assembly of the 80th Congress, now controlled by the Republicans for the first time in 14 years. Symbol of this new power is the handing over of the Speaker's office to Congressman Joseph W. Martin. The new session opens as the Speaker takes his place amid the applause of his colleagues and is sworn in to his high office. Facing him are 430 members of the House, and they in turn are sworn in by the Speaker. Among these members will originate many of the finance bills which have such vital bearing on future national economy. Taking his place on the Senate side is Senator Barkley, who now leads the minority. Senator Bilbo of Mississippi was the storm center of a controversy which at first threatened to bar him from the House. And so, with President Truman facing a heavy weight of opposition, Congress moves forward into one of the most crucial periods in American history.
80% of the LMS horse-drawn traffic in London was idle when nearly 1,000 dray horses went down with flu. It was a reminder that even in these days of vans and lorries, a great deal of haulage in the capital is still done by horses. And the horses were very sick. The epidemic ran through the stables till 940 out of 1,200 were unfit for work. Medicine, which includes penicillin and M&B, goes down in spectacular amounts. It's rare for the hard-working friend of man to be on the sick list. London, with its few hills, lends itself to horse transport, so day in, day out, Dobbin patiently trudges on, unheeded, almost unseen by the rest of the fast-moving workaday world. He's almost the only toiler the no-beer notices don't annoy. In all weathers, come heat, come frost, he plods along, bearing more than his share of the world's burden and asking very little in return. In the railway stables, it's the biggest job the vets have had for many a year. Only one of the 940 sick animals died, which is chalked up to the credit of the M&B and injections of anti-flu serum. The shivering and hot bran mash is part of the diet. On the average, it's a fortnight before they're fit for duty again. Meanwhile, they are in good care, well on the way to recovery. In the Lord President's room at number 11 Downing Street, Mr. and Mrs. Attlee were congratulated by the Cabinet on their silver wedding. It was an informal tribute to their popular leader by his colleagues, who all declared themselves happy under his persuasive guidance. Foreign affairs were forgotten for an hour. Herbert Morrison forgot the cares of Parliament. In fact, everybody present had only one thought: to pay tribute to the Prime Minister and his wife on a very happy occasion. Herbert Morrison presented to Mr. and Mrs. Attlee the Cabinet's gift, a silver salver inscribed with all their signatures. Finally, Echoing the sentiments of millions outside, they sang, "He's a Jolly Good Fellow."
From Melbourne, where thousands saw Australia make certain of keeping the Ashes, come newsreel pictures showing more highlights of the match. For example, Yardley getting Bradman caught and bowled in the second innings. And a fine piece of fielding by Edridge that sent Johnson back to the pavilion. Then, of course, there was the presentation of the teams to the Governor-General and the Duchess of Gloucester. Though the MCC contrived to make a draw of the match, there were some nasty moments, as when McCool got Edridge LBW. Compton lost his wicket like this. And the final highlight. They don't draw stumps after a test, they grab them. In Los Angeles, our camera follows the fortunes of star golfers in the Open tournament there, with special reference to putting. If it's any consolation to ordinary mortals, they can see how even the top notchers can go to pieces on the green. Ben Hogan was a good example of this. As a matter of fact, apart from some putting lapses, Ben played great golf and won the title plus $2,000. And that's quite a consolation, too. In Florida, we found General Eisenhower playing golf. He's been having a medical checkup and spent his time on the links in between doctors' examinations. Ike is usually followed about by the press, and so it was here.
General, your name has been brought up several times in regarding possible political office. Would you care to comment on that, sir?
Ever since I have first heard my name connected with possible political office, I have consistently declined to consider or discuss such a contingency. I am a soldier. I belong to the Army. The Army lives to serve the American people. I have no political party whatsoever.
On the other hand, General Marshall, who is very much a soldier, has turned to politics. After having worked hard but in vain to reconcile the communists with Chiang Kai-shek, he's certainly gained a lot of political experience. He now replaces Mr. Burns as Secretary of State and may perhaps find some of the tasks that lie ahead as difficult as his mission in China. St. Moritz, by the way, has got going again. At the first international meeting held there since before the war, there were plenty of first-class men competing.